Hi everybody, my name is Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano. I'm the author of Solo Standards for Piano, or should I say I'm the arranger, maybe? I don't know. And I'm the author of the Jazz Piano Fundamental series, of which there are 3 books. And actually today I'm going to talk about some concepts that are in book 3, which I did not just show you. But this is part of my continued voicing series. And if I'm going to be honest, I'm usually not honest on my channel, as you guys know. I'm usually just full of total BS. I wasn't planning on including these kinds of voicings in the series, but got inspired. I'm kind of enjoying this voicing series. I want it to be as full as possible. So I thought, you know what? I should go ahead and I will include triad pair voicings and I will include cluster voicings, but I'm going to smash them together into one episode. 1, because maybe they're a little bit less important, but 2, I'm going to show you how these 2 concepts can actually really work together beautifully. So let's start by talking about triad pair voicings. And triad pair voicings are kind of exactly what they sound like. This is going to be a 6-note voicing, and it's more appropriate for modal context than for tonal. That's like a greater sign is the idea there. It's more appropriate for modal than for tonal. And these are going to have a triad in each hand. 2 different triads. And whenever possible, I'm going to try to have 6 different notes. So it wouldn't be a very good voicing probably if I did an A minor triad and an F major triad, right? Because they have a lot of notes in common. So instead, I want something like an A minor and a G major. Okay, and this is something to remember, that this is usually going to work the best when these are 2 consecutive triads, or I should say 2 consecutive diatonic triads. What does that mean? That means whatever scale or mode you're using, they're going to be right next to each other in that mode. So let's take friendly old D Dorian. So if we're thinking about triads, we could build a triad on each note of the scale, right? And so the ones that are going to work best together are going to be ones that are right next to each other in the scale, like D minor and E minor. Now notice if I put them both in root position, they sound okay. But I like the sounds that I get much more if I have at least one of them in inversion. So check out, I could have the D in root position and then the E in inversion. And I like having a second here. It doesn't have to be 100% of the time, but I like when between the 2 triads, we have this tight interval. And so notice what I'm doing is I'm inverting both triads. Now, a couple of ground rules that we might want to think about. We might want to stay away from diminished triads. They just really don't sound that great on their own. So we want to avoid diminished triads, and we want to avoid the overall interval of a minor ninth. All right, this is a general good voicing rule. We want to avoid that interval of a minor ninth, which kind of means that although D below E, right, there's the E, there's the D, that sounds good. If I reverse these, I've got this minor ninth here. That's not so nice. This sounds okay. This is E below D. So you do have to be a little careful. Which 2 chords you're combining and what kind of intervals they have. Now, here I passed through one that had a minor ninth, but I think I wouldn't want to rest there, right? Because you could just hear that interval. Okay. So like I said, these are going to be more applicable in modal context rather than tonal context. It's going to be pretty tricky or at least weird to express a 2-5-1 with these voicings. We'd have to really be like, okay, here's D minor, and then G7, I don't even know. It's a little tricky. something like that. And then here's C major. Like, it's not really designed for tonal music. Like most modal things, you can make it work better for tonal music. But it's going to be more, we're playing So What, and I'm going to comp. Some of you might be wondering, are you keeping the same 2 triads the whole time? And the answer is no. I'm moving between sometimes playing G over F, sometimes playing E minor over D minor like we saw, sometimes playing, I need another idea. That's the same, A minor and G. Right, this is G major, A minor. So, it's not that you have to pick 2 triads and stick to them. Like most modal voicings, you can move through the scale. Okay. So now, you might ask, well, what does this have to do with cluster voicings, right? Well, first, let's just define that a cluster voicing is a voicing with lots of seconds. So I don't have like a particular benchmark. Cluster voicing is probably gonna like take up no bigger than an octave, but it's gonna largely consist of the interval of a second. There's a very crude example of a cluster voicing, but I'm not saying that because there's anything wrong with it. And in fact, for most of my life, this is how I thought cluster voicings were formed. And it's not exactly incorrect. But I think a much better way to form a cluster voicing is to collapse a bigger voicing into a cluster. And I think one great way to do it, not the only way by any stretch of the imagination, but one great way to do it would be to take a triad pair voicing. So let's go back to, there's E minor over D, and I'm gonna literally bring my right hand down. Now I've got a cluster voicing formed by hand over hand, which I think is, to me, the effect is so much better than just playing a bunch of notes with one hand. And you might say, that's crazy, they're the same notes, or they're approximately the same notes. Why is it different? 2 reasons, at least 2. I always say a number and then I get started talking and then there's more reasons. But the first reason is voicing, right? Not in terms of I'm making a voicing series, in terms of which note are we bringing out. We're gonna have much more control, much more opportunity if we're doing it with 2 hands. Right now, I'm focused on the pinky of my right hand. I could focus on the thumb of my left. Could focus on the second. But having it, to me, it's like having a point to the arrow when you have a certain note bringing out. And it's especially important in these cluster voicings because they can just sound like nothing at all. Whereas if I do that same thing and I bring out one note, now that arrow has a point to it. That's my metaphor. Second reason is, at least for me, I'm much more mobile, right? Of course, in D Dorian, I can do that fast. In E flat Dorian, I'm pretty well trained. I'm a pretty good pianist. I can find different shapes pretty fast, but if I'm thinking about a triad in each hand, it's a lot easier to imagine this as music rather than just like blah, blah, blah. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 2 triads and I'm putting hand over hand. Could be the right hand above the left. I'm not really too concerned about like which hand is on top. Usually, for me, it's easiest to bring out or allow to sing the top note of the right hand, but you can experiment with what kind of voicing works best for you. So very interesting sound. Now, with each voicing in this series, I am going over to what a difference a day makes, and I'm filling in voicings. So we're going to be doing a very modal version of this, where we'll just think of like the first two measures here as B flat sus, using B flat mixolydian. So let's start with non-cluster voicings. Maybe I'll do something like that. Whenever I'm doing modal voicings, I'm thinking of a melody first. 1, 2, beduva. 1 and 2, aduva. Okay. And so then I've got my two triads. I'm going to use a B flat on top and an A flat on bottom. Do, do, da. Aren't you proud of me? I can sing an A flat triad. Bo, do, da. And then as we do an inversion, I'm just going to invert both triads. Maybe I said that weird. As we go down to another note of the B flat chord. And then here I'm going to a note of the A flat chord. And I'm going to reverse. And now A flat triad is going to be on top. And B flat's going to be on bottom. And because these are both major triads, we're not going to have that minor ninth problem. That's not going to occur, I don't think, between major triads. And let's go ahead and do 2 quarter notes here. I'm going to do a F minor triad in inversion and then E flat triad on bottom. Do, do, do. And then I'm going to reverse those two. I'm going to put the E flat on top. So now we got 1, 2, and now let's express the E flat major. So I'm going to make sure that I have some notes in my magic range that reflect the 3rd and 6th in this case of the E flat major. Okay. Now this gets a little tricky here. Why do I say it gets tricky? So we don't really do dominant chords in modal jazz. And there's not a lot of triads that are going to express this A flat 7 well because of the intervallic structure. But we could do an E flat minor on bottom and an F minor on top. I think that would be really nice. All right, why did I choose that? Because it's got that 7th. How do you resolve that is a really good question, which I don't immediately have the answer to. But it definitely makes the most sense to go to a G minor triad here. And then I don't really love my options for complementary. Sorry, I said G minor. This is a B flat major triad. I'm a dummy. I don't love my options because I'm going to have C, which is really bright. Or E, so B flat could go to A minor. That voice leads well. I don't know that it describes the chord the best. And then we're really, because, C7, what mode are you using, who could say? I'm just going to transition this into a type A, like 5-note altered chord. Right, so I'm not under a legal obligation to continue with that same kind of voicing. And notice I still have a nice triad on top, so it's not like I'm totally abandoning ship here. So let's hear how this sounds. Cool? Now, here's the experiment. What happens if I take the right hand down an octave? Then we got cluster voicings. 1 and 2. What is this? Right? So you could see how there's this kind of give and take relationship between, I don't know if that's the word I want to use, between triad pair voicings on one hand and cluster voicings on the other hand. I hope you enjoyed this edition. Please keep following on Saturdays for voicings and keep following Wednesdays. I just still run through topics that hopefully are really interesting to me and to you as well. If you liked this, if these kind of modal voicings interest you, Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 3, I'm showing you Book 1 because I don't have Book 3 right here, but Book 3 talks about these two types of voicings specifically and other kinds of modal voicings. Thanks for watching. If you watched, why don't you say something about low battery? Because my computer's showing me low battery right now, which is why I have to stop this video. See you later.